So step number 3 is to drain the coolant. Because we'll be removing the engine, we're going to have to remove all the coolant lines. For the 20 valve swap, it's a little bit different than a regular 16 valve. Basically, we have all these coolant lines and also heater hoses going to the engine block. You can see the heater hoses over there, the 2 big blue lines, and we have the reservoir as well. And so before we remove all these lines that are connected to the engine itself, we have to drain the system. And it's a little bit more complicated for this car because the coolant system is so big. So to get the engine out here, we got to actually drain from the front, and this is why it's really beneficial to have the car jacked up from the back, so all the water wants to move to the front. And there's a few drain points we can use on the front. The natural one is to use the drain hose on the radiator itself. You can see it down there on the bottom corner. It's a little valve you open up and it will drain through the radiator. So we're going to use that one to start, and then when that one finishes, one of the pipes that go underneath the car that transfer the coolant from the engine to the radiator has drain plugs. So they're actually just 2 little bolts, one for each of the hoses, the fill and return, and you can undo those and it will drain from there. But first we're going to do it from here, from the radiator. So to access that, you can either go underneath the car, or in my case I have removed the plastic shroud here. It's just some pull-off clips, and then I can just reach down and undo it from the top. And let's go ahead and do that now, and then I'll show you the drain plugs on the hard lines themselves. Let's get started. So as you can see, it's draining right now. You're going to want to use a pan to capture the coolant. It's very harmful to the environment. It's also poisonous to animals. So while that's draining, the other thing to do to make it a little bit faster is to go to the back and open up your filler cap. This just relieves some of the pressure in the system. You can actually hear the pressure change as you open it up, and that will help the system drain. You could hear that. Because as the coolant's being drained, new air is moving into the system to replace. So we go back to the front. And yeah, it's draining much faster. So we're going to let that drain here until it stops. And then we'll move to the hardline drains right after. While we're waiting for the coolant to drain from the radiator, we can keep ourselves busy by removing the reservoir tank, the overflow reservoir tank. It just pulls out. Might seem like it's a little bit stuck in there, but all you have to do is just jiggle it around a little bit and pull, and it will pop out and disconnect the line. And we can move this somewhere else. If your coolant is really dirty, you can drain this, clean it. It's going to have a lot of sludge in it if you haven't ever cleaned it. Mine's nice and clean, so I don't have to do that. But let's go ahead and do that now. One more thing to note, make sure your heater slider is all the way to completely hot. This opens up the heater line so that you actually drain the heater circuit as well. If you're fully closed, this is actually just a flapper door. I can show you what it looks like on the front. It's this thing right here. So we have a cable here, and that's what's being changed when we slide the slider hot or cold, and it's actually just a flapper door which opens and closes the heater circuit. So we want it fully open so that we can drain the coolant which is in that circuit. So make sure it's set to fully hot. And if this is the first time draining your coolant, you're going to have to flush your system with water over and over again. It's going to be really dirty and sludgy and gross. I've already made a video on how to do that. You can just use a hose, it's nice and easy. But this is assuming that your system is clean and you just need to drain it really nice and quick. Alright, looks like it's almost finished here, and we can move to the hard lines. So as promised, we're underneath the car. Just behind the sway bar, you can see a silver bolt. That's the first drain bolt. And the second one is actually hidden underneath this plastic panel. If I pull it away here, I don't know how much you can see. No, I'll pull off the panel first and then I'll show you what it looks like. The second bolt is just hidden underneath. So just take this panel off. I've already started here. It's a bunch of 10mm bolts, and this panel will come right off and expose the second drain bolt. So let's go ahead. So with the body panel removed, you can now see the two silver drain bolts. Those are the two hard lines, and those are the manual drains. I replaced those bolts, that's why they're nice and shiny and silver. So we're just going to remove those and again let the system drain and then move back to the engine bay. So on the first bolt, that's the one on the left, nothing came out, but on the second one here, lots of coolant's coming out, and this just goes to show that even though we drained the radiator and the car is jacked up, all the coolant isn't out of the system. So we do need to take it out of the hard lines here. Though it's really easy. You just have to take those bolts out and let the system continue to drain. And then after this is done, we can move to the engine bay and start taking off the coolant lines. So let's let this finish and then move back to the engine bay. So now that the system is completely drained, we can start disconnecting the hoses from the engine. So on the 20 valve, we have the two heater hoses here, we have one coolant line here, and another one going here into the head. So we're just going to disconnect those, and we won't worry about taking out the actual lines until we drop the engine, but we need to disconnect it from the engine so that it doesn't go with it. So this is a little bit too hard to get back there right now and get all the hard lines, so we'll leave those till later. Just keep in mind there might be a little bit of coolant left in some of these hoses. It's really hard to get everything in this system just because it's so big. So just keep a towel underneath the hose when you pull it off, and wear gloves for the whole process, start to finish. Wear latex gloves just to protect yourself. So we'll go ahead and do that now, and that's it. That's how easy it was to drain the coolant and disconnect the lines in preparation for dropping your engine. Next we'll move on to step 4, which will be disconnecting all the electrical stuff, removing the intake system, which will be the air filter, mass airflow sensor, intake manifold, just to make it a lot easier when we drop the engine. So that'll be step 4. All the electrical connections, we can take off the spark plug wires, because why not? We don't want them to snag on anything. It's really easy to do. Igniter, things like that, just a little miscellaneous stuff we'll be taking off then. And let's get to it then.